Breeders' Cup 2025. It's time for a Future Stars Friday update. We recently had an update on the Classic Contenders, but this last weekend we had some Win and You're In and some Future Stars Friday Contenders emerged. We have the Juvenile fillies, Juvenile turf fillies, and the turf sprint all on Friday. And the final preps, the Keeneland Futurity, the American Pharoah, and the Alcibiades Stakes, just among the many dirt races, including the Frizette, the Champagne. And then on the turf, we had the Pilgrim, the Futurity, the Zuma Beach, and the Surfer Girl getting ready for the turf races on Future Star Friday. Meanwhile, let's take a look at some of the races. What are some of the contenders going next? And we start off with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. We've got Brant. He passed on the American Pharoah Stakes after winning the Grade 1 Del Mar Futurity. He is training towards the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He could go favored over Ted Noffey, who ran over the weekend and won at Keeneland. We've also got Desert Gate for Bob Baffert, second in the American Pharoah, and Intrepido, the American Pharoah winner. But let's take a look at Keeneland. Ted Noffey wins his third straight. He's trained by Todd Pletcher. He's by Into Mischief as the sire, who's already sired a couple of Kentucky Derby winners. Todd Pletcher, the trainer. Ted Noffey training towards that Breeders' Cup Juvenile. It'll be interesting to see who'll be favored between him and the high-priced yearling in Brant. Now, Brant won the Del Mar Futurity. This one, he was the big favorite. Got the job done over Desert Gate, who came back to run second in the American Pharoah Stakes. But Brant going to skip on the American Pharoah, training towards the Juvenile. We've got Napoleon Solo. Now, he won the Champagne Stakes with a nice speed figure, but it was a 1 mile distance, and he came out of a 5.5 furlong race. They're evaluating if they want to go to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile or maybe pass on that race and go to maybe the Remsen or start to think about a 3-year-old campaign. Napoleon Solo winning the Champagne. Now, comparing some of the Brisnet and Beyer speed figures of the 3 big prep races over the weekend, Intrepido got a 99 on the Brisnet scale, a 98 for Napoleon Solo. Meanwhile, Beyer said that Ted Noffey got the better speed figure in the Keeneland Futurity, with Intrepido getting the worst of the 3 on the Beyer scale. So how handicappers interpret some of these different speed figures could determine who goes favored in that Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And we'll talk more about that as we get closer and the field starts to firm up a little bit. Now, the Juvenile fillies, we've got Tommy Joe, 2-time Grade 1 winner, the Spinaway Stakes, then came back and after the DQ was put up first in the Alcibiades. Explora, Percy's Bar, she may be going to the Juvenile fillies. Now let's go back to that Alcibiades. The big favorite was Tommy Joe, but Percy's Bar took the lead, led him into the stretch. Tommy Joe gave chase. Now she was bumped, but it looked like Percy's Bar was going to win that race. Tommy Joe may have exposed some distance limitations, or she just may have bounced a little bit out of that big effort in the Spinaway Stakes. That's going to be another handicapping question as we get closer to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies. Explora for Bob Baffert won the Oakleaf Stakes. That was at Santa Anita. She won that race, showed some speed, and then kind of in her third lifetime race, picked up that big win in the Oakleaf Stakes for Explora, winning at Santa Anita. Now, when you look at their Beyer and Brisnet speed figures, Explorer got the highest Brisnet speed figure. Tommy Joe got a 91. Now, on the Beyer scale, they've got an 83 for Explorer. They have the best. What's interesting is Percy's Bar got an 80 on the Beyer scale, but technically she crossed the finish line first. Tommy Joe got a 75. Now, if you think she was bumped and interfered with and would have won the race, that puts her at an 80, but her official Beyer was 75, and she was moved up via the disqualification. Now, the Juvenile turf, we've got Final Score, Bottas, and Stark Contrast. Let's go back to Keeneland. Sunday, the Bourbon Stakes final score for Todd Pletcher, the favorite at 7-5. This was a strong performance on the turf. Led him into the stretch. A lot of times with young horses, they kind of fade late, but final score backed up another big victory with that win at Keeneland in the Bourbon Stakes. And Bottas was at Aqueduct on Saturday, the Pilgrim Stakes, won that race, and Bottas, coming out of a maiden race, winning that race, looks like he's going to go to the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar as his next start. Now, Stark Contrast won the Zuma Beach. This was a nice effort. Smaller field, not as deep of a turf division out west. I think the turf runners from Europe and the East Coast are probably going to have a better performance edge coming into the race, but Stark Contrast will be at home and doesn't have to ship, which could be a little bit of an edge. Then you've got the Juvenile Turf Sprint. Schwarzenegger, Albie Bach in the Breeders' Cup. He won at Keeneland. This was a nice effort. You know, he kind of disappointed his first time out, came back with big efforts. Schwarzenegger, bred to be a good one. I think they're going to like that 5-furlong distance of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint when it's held at Del Mar versus 5.5 furlongs when it's at Keeneland or some of the other tracks. Schwarzenegger probably pointing for that Juvenile Turf Sprint. Then we've got the Juvenile Turf Fillies. Brave Deb, she was a winner over the weekend. Let's go to the Surfer Girl Stakes. Richard Mandela, the trainer. Santa Anita, the location. And Brave Deb wearing those silks of Spendthrift Farm. Led in the stretch. Got a little bit of a challenge. Kicked in clear late. Brave Deb winning that Surfer Girl. I think the Euro is going to be strong here, especially in the fillies. Their fillies do well. We'll see what Brave Deb will go off at odds in the Breeders' Cup. Now, Final Accord was another one that won on Thursday to kick off the big juvenile weekend at Aqueduct, the Matron Stakes. The trainer was Mark Casse. We'll see what division looks good for Final Accord, but this one seems to be getting progressively better and improving for trainer Mark Casse, originally winning at Woodbine, and Final Accord winning that Matron Stakes at Aqueduct. So those are some of the winners. Those are some of the horses pointing for the Breeders' Cup. We're going to start getting more information on who's pointing where, some of the late workouts, when they're going to ship in. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Share this video with a horse racing friend. Leave a comment. What do you think about Tommy Joe? Did you like that disqualification of Percy's Bar? What do you think of the speed figures? It looks like some people like Brant. Others are going to prefer the 3 wins on the Keeneland Futurity winner. And Todd Pletcher has got a couple of nice horses coming into the Breeders' Cup. He's done well on that Breeders' Cup Future Stars Friday. The Breeders' Cup prospectus coming out with stats and information. Sign up below in the description to get notified first when that comes out. We do have a video on the Breeders' Cup Classic contenders. Make sure to watch that. And also the recap of the points races for the 2026 Kentucky Derby. The 3 winners, those are up. Watch that as well as we get you ready for Kentucky Derby 2026 and Breeders' Cup 2025. And remember, D. Wayne Lucas always said, people have opinions, horses have the facts.